Right, Governor, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today. Can you believe it's been 8 years? And has that set in yet that 8 years has gone by?
Well, it has flown by. 8 years in my life is a long time. It's probably the longest I've held one job. And it's been the highest honor of my public career to be a governor of this state. But it has gone quickly. A lot has happened. We've worked hard. But it is coming to a close under our Constitution, and it's exciting for me to move on to something else, but also to welcome in my successor, Sarah Sanders.
Over the 8 years, and we could be here forever to talk about the accomplishments, but top three, one of them has to be getting through what we all thought would never happen, a pandemic. How do you think the state has fared since day one to today as far as getting through this crisis?
Well, I think we fared very well, better than many states, because we didn't shut down the economy. I didn't shelter in place. I didn't yield to the pressure that was coming. And I said, these are jobs. These are what people depend upon. And so we, by and large, kept our economy open, and that helped us to recover very quickly. We also kept our schools open. You know, everybody went virtual that first year, but in the second year, we said, we got to get them open. And we resisted again that national trend. So there's some good decisions made. Nothing was perfect, but that was a test of leadership. That was a test of the resilience of our state, patience of our state. I think we came through it very well.
The staff that you had in place, Nate Smith, Jose Romero, all the folks that you relied on, could you have done this without them?
No, but I wore out two of them.
Yeah.
You know, to show you the credentials that they had, the Centers for Disease Control took Dr. Nate Smith first and said, we need you at the national level. And then Dr. Jose Romero was recruited by them as well. But no, it was really a team effort, and it's important, and we had that balance that, you know, we had recommendations from our public health community that was very important, in our medical community. We had all the national advice that we needed, but in the end, you have to make the best judgments you can for your state and listen to people and to give them the ability to make judgments with a lot of information, with the best information we provide. I think that's what we did.
Another top three, I would think, would be the tax cuts that have taken place in the last few years. How would you rate that as one of your accomplishments?
Well, I would rate it above the pandemic. And so absolutely, and to me that was a test of leadership again, that whenever we started out with a 7% individual income tax rate when I got elected, and people said, you cannot get it done, it's impossible to lower that, you're going to make us like Kansas, you're going to disrupt our services. Well, we did it gradually, thoughtfully. We grew our economy at the same time, and now we have it down to 4.9%, and it means that it's about $800 million a year that's going into taxpayers' pockets versus the government's. And at the same time, we created a reserve fund that we never had. We are paying our teachers more than we ever have before, invested in education. So that's something I'm very proud of, and that will be long-lasting in our state in terms of being competitive with our surrounding states in terms of growth.
I was going to say, how much did that and does that make Arkansas more competitive, not only for the neighboring states, but nationwide?
Well, absolutely. It allows us to attract talent, but also capital. People that have sold their businesses and made a large amount of money. They don't feel like they've got to abandon Arkansas to go somewhere else for a lower tax rate. And so it allowed us to be competitive, but also in the recruitment of industry. They measure whether they want to go to Texas or whether they want to go to Tennessee or Alabama or Mississippi. And we have to compete there. And now with our low taxes in real estate and other things, we are able to compete.
You talked about education, I think, and from a husband of a retired teacher, the computer science aspect of what kids are learning today, I don't think has been seen in this state ever. Is that, how important was that in your mind to get the computer science, the coding, and you made a big, before pandemic, made a huge effort going around the state really to promote this. How well has that worked?
Well, it's worked well in Arkansas. It is of historic proportions here, but it is also of historic proportions even nationwide. And not only has it meant that our Arkansas students have greater access, complete access to computer science education, we've also have been noted as leading the nation in computer science. And so it's given us a platform, a bragging point, but just in the number of students, when we started this initiative, we only had 1,100 students in Arkansas taking computer science in a very few number of schools. That number has gone to each year increased to where this year we have 23,000 students. And it's only going to continue because now it's a requirement for graduation. We're investing money in it. We have retrained our teachers. We used to have 20 teachers that could teach computer science. Now we have over 800 certified. And so it's really a source of pride, but it's really making a difference both in the opportunities that our students have, but also in our ability to have startup tech companies to be able to support the technology industries that we have here in this state.
I was just about to say, how does the state now, once these students are taught and they learn this, how do you keep them in the state to which they have learned this new trade?
Well, we have tens of thousands of open jobs just in Arkansas in the computing field. And whether it's IT, whether it's cybersecurity, software development. So the need is here. We can keep them here, but also many of these are going to be entrepreneurial. They're going to be creating their own startup companies, their own software, their own game design, and that's exciting. And they can do it, as I've said, for 8 years. You know, you can run the world from your front porch out of Gravette, Arkansas, if you know computer coding and you got access to the internet, which we do. And so they could work for any company in the world right here from Arkansas.
As far as the health of the state is concerned, how has our home worked in the state in making sure that that people have health insurance, health coverage? How important is that to have that program in the state?
Well, it makes all the difference in someone's life. If you don't have access to health insurance and health coverage, then you're not getting the medical treatments you need. You're afraid to go in and get checkups. You're postponing things, which ultimately is going to cost everybody more money. And it's a quality of life issue. And so it's made a difference in individuals' lives. From a state standpoint, we've moved up where we're a much higher percent of insured workers and individuals in our state. We've helped those that are struggling in life to have health coverage that allows them to get a job and feel comfortable and care for their family. So it's made a big difference in our state. You know, the Our Home part of it really helps our rural hospitals. Mm-hmm. It's going to be able to support to a greater extent our mental health counseling, our maternal care, which is very important to try to improve our infant mortality rates, the well-being of those that are beginning life. And so there's much more to be done, and we're just starting this initiative, but we have that waiver, we have it set into place, and it's exciting to see how this will make a difference, particularly in the rural parts of our state.
I know when it first started, there were a few glitches here and there, but it seems like it's worked itself out.
Well, it has. I mean, we tried to put in a work requirement that you had to engage in or do community service. That was opposed by then the Obama administration. It was ultimately struck down. But we tried to bring in some accountability with this very important benefit that people need.
Broadband, it's become a huge thing as well across the state. Is the state where it needs to be right now when it comes to broadband, especially in the rural parts of the state? And how much more does it need to be improved?
Well, everybody who's listening, there'll be somebody that raises their hand and says,
"Where's my broadband?"
Yeah, my internet's not fast enough speed. And so we're not there yet, but we have much of the infrastructure in place to make us successful. And so we have given hundreds of millions of dollars out in grants to expand broadband in our rural areas. I think the last statistic we had about 100,000 households that might not have access, which means they're in a very rural part of the state. It's expensive to get it to them, and we're gradually decreasing those numbers and getting it out. So there's more work to be done there, but there'll be a continued investment of state and federal dollars to make us successful.
From the time you took office 8 years ago to now, how has the state become an attractive business venture, not only from people across the country, but from around the world? Do they look at Arkansas as this is where I want to go?
And the answer is absolutely yes. We have people daily moving in from California. We have them moving in from Chicago, all across the country because of what you just said. It's a great place to live, but it's also the reputation that we have. The reputation of a micro center for technology companies, for global companies that are located here, for the quality of life and the diversity. You know, there's no such thing now as the old hillbilly image. It is now a fast-moving image that we have of a great place to live with incredible opportunities. Probably the best example of it is that I created the Council on Future Mobility, looking at drones, looking at autonomous vehicles, and how we can move into transportation in different modes in the future. There was not anybody that sneered and said, Arkansas shouldn't be doing this. They all are looking at this and saying, wow, Arkansas is leading, and it doesn't surprise anybody.
I would assume you're hoping that that continues with the new administration, that effort that was started really gets bolstered.
Well, I'm confident of that because it's right for our state, and Governor-elect Sanders is primed to help in these things, and I know our emphasis is in education, but job creation as well. So I'm very confident about that, but it's also so much the private sector. You know, you give them, you know, a start, or you give them encouragement. They're innovators, and you know, with the educational resources that we developed in Arkansas, I think it has momentum of itself. But I'm confident that we're gonna continue to lead.
I know you've been asked this before. Any regrets in the last 8 years of maybe something that you wanted to get done and really just couldn't?
Well, you know, there's always things, and that's the thing you realize, that no matter how much you accomplish, there's more to be done. And that's part of a democracy. It's a part of just meeting challenges of each day that are different. And that's why governors are good, because they have to be held accountable for what they're doing. But, you know, in terms of wishing we had done more, I always want to do more for our foster children, to increase adoption services, their well-being. We've done a lot, but there's more to be done there. And that's a big state responsibility. So I'm looking forward to this next legislative session. I'll be out, but I've asked them, and I trust that they're going to do more for our foster children in terms of reimbursement for those that are the caretakers. Obviously, there's more to be done in public safety. We're going to have to build a new prison. So more, not regrets, but just more to be done that we couldn't get done in time. Speaking
of the legislative session, are you going to be the one that stands at the doorway and just kind of wants to see what they're talking about, even though you can't be a part of the system?
Let me assure you, I will not be that one. No, I'm going to be here in Northwest Arkansas. I'll be doing some things nationally. I'll be watching from a distance, but that's the great thing about you know, the broadcast system. I'll get to follow it from a distance.
Final question. 8 years ago, you and I had a conversation before you became governor, and I asked you, do you have plans to run for governor? And you said, I'll bet you don't think I'm going to answer that. And you did, and you said you would. I saw the AP interview you did about a presidential campaign. When, if, could there be a decision on your part about running for president?
Well, there has to be a decision in the first quarter of next year, simply because, you know, the time frame for 2024 sneaks up on you very quickly. I mean, the first debates will be probably mid-year next year. So there's a long runway. You've got to get going on it. And so probably the first quarter of next year. And I'm listening to a lot of people thoughtfully making that decision. And obviously the financial resources are a part of that. So I will tell you this, that I think I've had more encouragement to run for president than I did to run for governor. So that's an encouragement.
Would it matter who is running? Would that be the basis of your decision? Does that make sense?
Well, it does. It's a very appropriate question, and there's a lot that are considering it that I like. I think would be good leaders, but you know, the bigger question is, you know, who's going to respond to them, and how's the electorate going to respond to them, and so that's what you test. And so it's not a question as to who else is in there. The question is, what kind of response are you getting in your message, and whether there's something unique about it to take our country in the right direction, and that's what I'm measuring.
Governor, it's been a pleasure covering you the last 8 years. Thank you so much for coming in. Have a nice Christmas this year, and we'll see you next year, hopefully.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity today.